Hello, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about building a large-scale migration factory in Google Cloud. My name is Nick Taylor, and I'm our EMEA lead for migration in our professional services team. And with me today is Ben.
Hey everyone, Ben Hagai here. I'm the migration global practice lead for our professional services organization.
Thanks, Ben. So we're going to talk about 3 steps in building a large-scale migration factory and how to get that infrastructure into GCP. First of those steps is building a business case. So understanding the value of a migration, why you're doing it and what it will achieve for your business. Step 2 is about establishing foundations, both technical and non-technical, and preparing for scale, picking those first applications and getting some infrastructure moved. And then the third step is about scaling the factory. So how to industrialize the process, move large volumes of workloads. So first off, building that business case. Even though it's almost inevitable you'll save money with a cloud migration, any change requires effort, and that means cost. So we need to understand really where the value realization is and how you're going to save money and gain efficiencies in that cloud migration. So let's take a look at how we understand the value of that migration. So it's true to say that the majority of IT budgets are allocated today to maintaining the status quo, looking after your current infrastructure. So what we need to think about is how we can lower your run costs to free up money for innovation. Migrations are always disruptive, so it's important to get executive sponsorship in driving that migration, and demonstrating those savings are a good step in that process. So we think about building a migration return on investment calculation. We look at your as-is run rate. So what are you spending today on infrastructure, on maintaining your infrastructure, and on software licensing, on people who manage that infrastructure, also the assets themselves, data centers, land, rent, and things like power. On the other side, we compare that with what the likely to-be spend is. So what's the anticipated ramp of spend in GCP? What will it cost you to get the migrations moved over? And what does the timeline look like to decommission your existing infrastructure? So when will you start to realize that value? When we look at your current run costs, we think about the inventory of your infrastructure and understanding from a real sort of fact-based way where you're spending today and how easy it will be to do the migration. So we use inventory tooling for that. You can see examples of some of our preferred partners on the screen. Those tools will look at the servers themselves, so what's their size and shape, CPU, memory, and so on, and also how well they're utilized, as well as the dependencies in between them. This tooling will also look at things like storage, networking, security costs, and you need to consider things like logging and backups as well. And we add into that those supporting costs, building maintenance, power, cooling, software licensing, and so on, as we build the cost model. Then we need to think about the other side of the business case, which is how you're going to realize value, how you're going to drive efficiencies through cloud migration. The first of these is infrastructure optimization, and grid computing is a great example of this. Imagine risk calculations that run for 8 hours overnight, 5 days a week. So your production environment then is idle for 16 hours a day during the week, and often the complete weekend. Meanwhile, your disaster recovery environment is idle the whole time. So actually, you're barely using your infrastructure. We've seen banks that make 80% savings when they move those calculations to the cloud by just using infrastructure on demand without making any changes to their applications. Although less magnified, that's true for disaster recovery in general. You don't need a full-size DR environment always running. You can spin that up as you need it in the cloud. There are other savings here for infrastructure, things like storage optimization, considering backup strategy, and just adjusting your infrastructure for peak load. The second thing to consider here is operational efficiency. So Google Cloud gives consolidated availability and performance monitoring of all the infrastructure that you deploy. And similarly, we recommend using infrastructure as code for deployment of both servers themselves and all the supporting infrastructure, firewalls, and so on. By doing so, you're realizing significant operational savings. Also, things like automated patch management and consolidating security tooling mean that you'll save further. When you think about modernizing applications, that's the third step here. Refactoring applications to be cloud native means you'll take advantage of both of those things. Just infrastructure when you need it, and also the operational efficiency of continuous deployment and consolidated cloud native tooling. So when we bring all those things together, we build a complete value model for your cloud migration. Both the current and future operating costs gathered from tooling, and then data from across the organization on the benefits that cloud can bring you. Together, those things show your expected returns. You'll see here there's a bit of a hump from migration costs, inevitably as you're dual running infrastructure and perhaps paying for services, whether ours or a partner, or even just your own time in doing that migration. But we can help you offset that migration hump as you migrate and maximize value as early as you can. So far, we've spoken about cost savings, but what other value you can get by migrating to the cloud? Cloud migration helps you unlock business value. So as you've migrated data into the cloud, often you're seeing queries take seconds where they used to take days. So that access to real-time data enables you to make more strategic business decisions based on real-time data, and also allows access to that tooling, that data, and to things like machine learning across your organization. It also enables business agility. So we describe that kind of rapid software lifecycle and continuous deployment. Means typically lower time to market for new features and new innovation in the business. And then finally, Google Cloud is one of the most robust. So our global security and our world-class network used for our own products is now available to you, meaning there's less likelihood of business disruption from IT service outages. So you've thought about a clear business case now. You've got approval to move forward with your migration. What next? So we start to look at how to build the foundations in the cloud. As you'd expect from Google, we think about migration more than just about technology. You might need to change your organization as well when you're thinking about adopting the cloud to really gain the benefits. We use the Google Cloud Adoption Framework as the core of our operating model in the cloud and help you understand the implications of that cloud migration, how to get the best out of it, and what might need to happen in your organization. The Cloud Adoption Framework is made of 4 key themes: learn, lead, scale, and secure, that you see here on the screen. Learn means, of course, learning new skills in training and technology, but it also changes the way you learn. Cloud resources are cheap and disposable, so it means people can learn and innovate safely through hackathons and experimentation. Leadership means, of course, executive sponsorship for the program and a clear vision, but it also means sharing knowledge and good practice across the organization. We recommend something like a center of excellence or a cloud platform team to help achieve that. And this kind of psychological safety and reduction of silos across the organization as well. Scale means using cloud adoption to build repeatable, scalable processes. So we talked about DevOps and continuous integration and infrastructure as code here, to mean it's much easier for you to scale vast quantities of infrastructure with less operational toil. Security means trust, really, trust in the deployment of the cloud. We think typically that cloud security is stronger than on-premise security, but it's different. You need to think about how your security model will change. So how do you know where you are with those 4 key things? We take that model and we help you do a cloud maturity assessment across each of the themes. We'll look at whether you're taking a tactical, strategic, or transformational view of cloud adoption. So where are you today and how far do you want to go as an organization and the change that you might need to undertake? And we'll help you make recommendations, allow you to set up your cloud team and really get the best out of the cloud as you start migrating. That assessment can be undertaken by us in our professional services team, through partners, or you can do it yourself using a self-service tool, and the URL for that is on the screen here. So once you've understood that cloud maturity and where you are on those key themes, you'll really start to understand the operating model you want to build in the cloud. So those translate into those themes you see here on the left about platform engineering and governance and building that operating model. We take the lessons from the maturity assessment and build that cloud operating model for your organization. It takes all those themes and establishes a set of controls and services that allow you to operate comfortably in the cloud. Most of that, as I mentioned, sits in a cloud center of excellence team or cloud platform team, but spreads out across the organization. You'll see here on the right where that cloud center of excellence sits between your application teams on the right and the cloud infrastructure on the left. If you're a DevOps team, you might just adopt the cloud straight away within those guardrails. But for lots of legacy applications and the focus of our discussion today, we recommend the migration factory team, that set of people and processes that can help migrate applications at scale. So once you've built that organizational structure, we think about the technical foundations that you need based on those controls that you've defined to automate the deployment of your infrastructure. So you need that secure place to move your infrastructure, consider whether it looks like your on-premise estate or whether it needs to evolve, things like identity management, security controls, obviously networking, so establishing the technical connectivity between your on-premise environment and the cloud, but also the structure of your network, whether it looks like, again, on-premise, whether you're using new cloud-native ways of working. Instrumentation means defining the baseline of all of your monitoring of your infrastructure, making sure it's available and performs at least as well as it did on-premise when you move it to the cloud. And finally, of course, it's really important to think about cost control. It used to be that your procurement department would buy infrastructure or approve that perhaps once a year, whereas in the cloud, that's much more dynamic. So understanding the impact of that across your organization is really important. Remember, our focus to this is as infrastructure as code. We use our Cloud Foundations toolkit as a common baseline set of controls and automation for deploying all of that configuration. It allows you to rapidly deploy infrastructure, but also all of the supporting guardrails and controls. Everything is then version controlled and really easy to deploy. If you choose not to do that in an automated way, when you first get started in GCP, we also have an enterprise onboarding checklist, which is a step-by-step manual process to help you establish similar controls for your environment. Once you've got that environment all set up, we help you evaluate the migration path for each of your workloads. We have an overall approach that's really 4 steps here: assess, plan, migrate, and optimize. When we think about migration, there are 2 key approaches. For that rehosting and replatforming, we use our migration factory approach, the focus of our discussion today. But we also think about refactoring applications and how you change and modernize them. So when we look at that migration factory, we can dive a little bit deeper here into how we undertake that migration and scale that organization. So I'll hand over to Ben to talk a little bit about scaling that migration factory.
Thank you, Nick. So now that we've gone through building the business case, hopefully getting it approved, we have a technical approach. We made sure the technical and the non-technical foundations are ready. It's time to get into the actual migration. For the actual migration execution, we often see enterprises adopt a migration factory program. The migration factory teams will manage the overall migration process end-to-end. The applications will be migrated in what's called migration waves. The program and approach is primarily driven top-down within the organization, and the factory's aim is to maintain and accelerate the migration velocity, run in parallel to migrate faster. While we have arrived to an overall technical approach, each application will need to have a detailed discovery and assessment to make sure nothing unexpected comes up. And this is why you see in each of these migration factory waves, we have an assess and plan stages for the specific applications being migrated in that specific wave. To get started, you will build a small and agile pilot migration team. We usually call the migration team a pod or a migration squad. It needs to have a representation from the key people that will be needed, or from the key teams that will be needed to achieve a successful migration. Think application engineers, IT, product, business people, etc. To scale, and as you mature, some of these functions will move from the migration pod itself to the larger extended migration team or to the large COE. Functions like security, engineering, business now doesn't have to be inside a specific migration pods. And eventually we see those migration pods and the majority of the migration execution work driven by IT and operations. Application migration planning, this is one of the most important tasks for the migration team. Without proper planning, the migration might be at risk. We generally see large organizations rehosting about 80% of their workloads initially, focusing their transformation efforts in areas where they can maximize impact. But keep in mind that workloads that have already moved to GCP, even if they were moved with a simple rehosting, can later on be modernized to leverage more cloud-native services in a much easier way. The plan you build for the specific application migration or application component migration at this stage might differ from the default path. And even within the default migration strategy that you have defined, there are various patterns that can be used. For example, if you chose rehosting, okay, there might be rehosting into Google Compute Engine, GCE, rehosting into Google Cloud VMware Engine, GCVE, rehosting with OS upgrade, rehosting to bare metal, etc. Defining the specific application or application component migration path is the primary outcome of this phase. You should take the overall strategy for the project, for the program, together with the specific application data points achieved through automated discovery, CMDB, and information from key stakeholders gathered through interviews and questionnaires to decide what's the best path for this application. We continue by going into the next level of technical details on the migration. How will this specific application migration be executed? Breaking down to more and more details until we are comfortable that we have a well-defined viewpoint on how this migration is going to take place. Think pre and post migration activities, testing strategy, automation that should be prepared in advance, etc. In parallel to this technical deep dive, you should plan also further planning on the migration timing, taking into consideration technical dependencies as well as business dependencies like change freezes, planned releases, with the goal of ultimately defining to the greatest possible degree when exactly is this application going to be migrated. Identifying what will be the first workload to migrate is critical. I can't stress enough how important it is to get it right. And when I say getting it right, it doesn't only mean a workload to be migrated successfully. You want it to be a workload that is a good representation of your typical business workload, not too simple, an application that you can build up documentation and learn lessons from. Think back, what was the main migration goals of the project? Okay, ideally, pick a first mover that will show the value correlated to these goals. It can be improved performance, can be lower costs, something that is measurable and will make it worthwhile for the business to stay engaged. You can see various other considerations, and a lot can be discussed on this topic. But if I had to summarize it in one sentence, a good first mover will have a high business value, but low effort to implement. And when we talk about low effort to implement, automated tools are here to help you with that. They can assign a migration fit score automatically, taking into consideration various factors like operating system, performance, age, role, dependencies count, etc. We've talked a lot about people and processes, but the migration factory cannot be complete without a very mature technical angle. Google has a variety of technologies to accelerate migration of workloads with an emphasis on automation. Our migration factory methodology works alongside tools such as Migrate for Compute Engine, Migrate for Anthos, or data migration tools. Through our tools and technologies, we seek to maximize value to the business through accelerating your migration while minimizing risk and complexity. Migrate for Compute Engine will be the factory's primary tool for the migration execution. It's built from the ground up to enable accelerated migration of VMs, physical servers, and cloud machines into Google Compute Engine. It has all the essential capabilities to support the factory, from built-in testing for your VMs, automation tools to drive mass migration with minimal effort, advanced networking, security features, safe and fully consistent migration and rollback capabilities, and it can even upgrade legacy Windows 2008 on the go. With Migrate for Anthos, customers can now automatically migrate and modernize existing workloads running on-prem, on other clouds, or even GCE VMs directly into containers running on GKE or Anthos. It's a fantastic tool to those who wish to migrate and modernize, benefiting from cost efficiencies, benefiting from modernized operations management with the GKE and Anthos advanced tools like Service Mesh, Stack Driver, and the ecosystem, benefiting from modernized app lifecycle management for maintenance, upgrades, patching, overall increasing agility for operations and developers. Through the use of Migrate for Anthos, you can avoid some of the common modernization challenges, especially for those apps that are not actively developed or that you don't have access to the source code. Apps that you want to modernize fast without rewriting. Optimization is always a constant goal, whether it is as simple as compute optimization, where we have numerous tools and capabilities to help you reduce costs, optimize performance and operations, dozens of managed services offerings that can help you modernize your applications incrementally or overall, or application modernization methodologies and frameworks for either existing or new apps, all the way to easy to use AI and ML services that will allow you to further embed innovation faster. So when we think on what are some of the biggest lessons learned from large-scale migration factory programs, I think the first one would be that cloud means things can be redone. Don't overplan. One of the fundamental benefits that we talked about with the factory approach is the agile execution, the constant improvement. Leverage that. Focus on automation from the foundations to migration, deployment, controls. Automation is there to help you. Testing, both before and after. Have a well-defined view of what you want to test and how, who is going to do the testing, and make sure you execute it according to that plan. Maintaining velocity is key. Expect apps to move up and down the backlog. Be prepared for that. And you can never have too much communications and business engagement. Never underestimate the meaning of those status reports, status meetings, and ongoing regular updates for the success of the migration program. We are in it together. Now that you've learned more about how to make the move, how to build and scale your migration factory, you're likely asking how you can get started. Most enterprises choose not to make this change alone and seek for a partner to help them with this migration journey. At Google Cloud, we have a variety of ways to help you in this journey, including a broad and deep network of partners, our own specialist professional services organization that is working together with this partner ecosystem, a comprehensive training and enablement solutions, and various documentations to help you answer your questions along the way. So to recap, start with building your business case. Address current and future costs, as well as value and value drivers. Make sure it's driven by facts rather than just assumptions. Seek for a wide consensus to drive your migration journey forward. Establish enterprise foundations that will allow you to scale quickly, both technical and non-technical foundations, like the Cloud Center of Excellence. Scale your migration factory, leveraging the agile methodologies, iterate and improve your efficiency. Use the right tools to migrate quickly. And if you want to learn more, we have a collection of very thoughtful white papers that go further into the details on data center transformation, building a large-scale migration factory, etc. Or, of course, feel free to reach out to your Google representative. Thank you very much.